Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp, one of the most suppressed and censored investigative comedians in the world. Thank you for joining me and making this show possible. We're going to keep, suppress me if you must, but I'm going to keep doing this show. Thank you for being here. We are going to cover Venezuela, what Venezuelans think about the possible upcoming invasion, and also why a U.S. strike, continued U.S. strikes on Venezuela are not unlikely, but a full-on invasion is rather highly unlikely. We'll talk about that. Also, why the FBI sucks. I don't know if you need more reasons, but I'll bring them to you. That, some updates on Israel, how Israel wants to proceed with their ethnic cleansing of Gaza. That is becoming more obvious. But anyway, let's get going here. I want to start with a bit of a speech by Maduro and then some Venezuelans speaking on the U.S. threats, but it's obviously more than threats because the U.S. is blowing up fishermen off the coast of Venezuela. I mean, there's been no evidence that any of these people are actually drug runners. Even if they were drug runners, you are not allowed to just blow up every person with drugs around the world. So it's you're a war criminal no matter what. And of course, there's this ongoing mainstream media coverage, a lot of to do about the fact that the U.S. didn't just blow up one of the ships; they then circled back after 45 minutes of two people surviving and clinging to life on the wreckage of their ship. The U.S. circled back and bombed those two survivors and murdered them. And for some odd reason, the Democrats seem far more upset that they bombed the two survivors than just that they're killing scores of people. They seem equally horrific to me for some reason. I don't quite know why. They shouldn't be equally horrific. But anyway, let's start with this bit from Maduro. And what I love about this is they both translated his words from Spanish to English, but then they also added, a lot of time when you hear dubbed over in English or something, they'll dub it over, but in, the speaker will be speaking like this. And then the person dubbing it over will be talking like this. And that kind of ruins the speech. Like you can't, and this guy seems really jazzed about dubbing over this speech. So anyway, let's watch a little of this. Oh, hold on.
We must be capable of defending every single precious inch of this blessed land from any imperialist threat or hostile aggression, no matter its origin and regardless of the moment it may arise.
Well, here we are providing our full support and backing for the decisions. Wise decisions of our constitutional president, Nicolas Maduro, telling the North American Yankee imperialism that we are a people of peace, that we are not afraid, but that if necessary, we will know how to respond to the American imperialism, that we are destined to be free, that we continue with our project, which is Bolivar's revolution, the Bolivarian revolution of Bolivar, of Zamora, of Chavez, of Negro Primero, and now of our constitutional president, Nicolas Maduro. Here we stand, the valiant women.
And by the way, for those of you listening to the podcast, I think this is just an average Venezuelan that was at this pro-Venezuela protest or march. I don't think she holds any position of power. So it's kind of meant to show you what the average Venezuelan at one of these marches is thinking.
Declaring that our decisions and our actions will determine what it truly means for Venezuela and the world, the only lasting and genuine solution for our territory. We are destined to be free and we are not willing to surrender our land. It's more than just the heart of our community. It is our sacred soul. Because we who live here are truly a blessed land. Quite a lot.
I think that's because the audio was AI generated. The translation was AI generated, and so clearly something went wrong there. She didn't go ah. But anyway, I think these people are speaking quite clearly about being willing to fight for their country, and that the imperialists cannot just come and steal all their resources. Not just the imperialists, but the opposition leader. Corina Machado, who I played the other day, begging for outside countries to come in and steal trillions of dollars of her resources. She actually put a number on it. She was like, come and get the 1 point, whatever she said, $7 trillion of resources we'd like to give you for destroying our country. But yeah, so there was a little bit from Maduro, and there's a great article by David Swanson over on World Beyond War that I'm not going to go through every detail of it, but he talks about the top 10 reasons to pretend it's unusual for the U.S. government to blow people up, which is what's going on right now, right? With the double tap, with the fury over the fact that the U.S. went back and blew up these two people hanging from a ship after the ship had been blown up. People are furious about that. And David Swanson is saying, yeah, I don't quite understand why everyone acts like this is a new thing that the U.S. does. The U.S. murders innocent people all day, every day. So why are those two people that survived the first bomb a bigger deal? But he's saying, but you know what? Go ahead and pretend it's a big deal, because if it gets people active and furious and angry at this bloodthirsty war state, then okay, fine. Pretend it's a big deal. Pretend we aren't bombing wedding parties around the world. Pretend we're not part of the genocide in Gaza and that this is a new thing for us. Whatever you got to do to wake people up. But let me bring you from Al Jazeera. This is, and they're quoting, U.S. Various U.S. military personnel, higher ups, and things like that, or analysts. But they're saying the odds of an actual invasion into Venezuela are very low. And here's some of the reasons. They say what nearly all experts have ruled out is a ground invasion. Quote, this is from a quote from Elias Furrer, founder of Orinoco Research and the lead editor of the Venezuelan media organization. He says, I don't really see that an attack is likely at all at this stage. There will be no boots on the ground because U.S. ground forces in the region are not strong enough for an invasion. Furthermore, a large-scale land operation would likely be deeply unpopular in the U.S. and face major obstacles at home. And latest polling shows that I believe it was like 17%, only 17% of the U.S. supports U.S. invasion and attack on Venezuela, which is pretty crazy low for the amount of propaganda we're getting. I mean, this is already months, it's really decades, right, of anti-Venezuelan propaganda. It's been months of this, we have to stop the drug runners propaganda. None of it's been working for the Trump administration or for our bloodthirsty media apparatus. And only 17%, and that includes far right-wingers, right? Only 17% want an attack of invasion of Venezuela. Here's a quote from a political scientist at Leiden University in the Netherlands. Says, any move toward overt ground operations would encounter significant legal barriers, congressional pushback in the shadow of Iraq and Afghanistan, all of which make a full occupation extremely unlikely. And the U.S. President, Donald Trump, not sure if you heard of that young whippersnapper who seems to be falling asleep in all of his meetings nowadays, but he actually does seem to care what people think because he wants to be hugely popular. He really apparently wants a Nobel Peace Prize. A lot of presidents, they're like, as long as I, do what the empire needs, I don't give a shit if I get prizes and things. He's different in that way. He is a fascist piece of shit. Don't get me wrong. In fact, ICE agents are in your town right now doing fascism. So this is not to say, isn't Donald Trump awesome? But he does seem to want to be popular. And if you were to have a full-on U.S. military invasion of Venezuela, it would not be popular. It would be catastrophic. But here's some more. While some policymakers in Washington hope a military strike would trigger a political transition in government, analysts warn it is far more likely to plunge Venezuela into instability. Furrer described the idea of an attack as opening Pandora's box. Quote, armed actors are empowered in a conflict, so either the military itself or paramilitary actors, whether they're politically motivated or just organized crime, could try to take over certain parts of the country. That is not the only result, but you open up a lot of those possibilities. And of course, that doesn't facilitate what the U.S. wants. The U.S. largely wants a stable extraction of the resources of Venezuela. If you were to have just a failed state type situation, it's not very useful for that stable extraction and stealing of resources. And unlike some of the other powerful countries like China or Russia, Venezuela is not, they're not projecting power. They're projecting a stable socialist country, which the US hates that aspect of it. But Russia and China project power in a way that Venezuela does not. So the idea of needing to turn Venezuela into a failed state doesn't, again, help the corporatists who want to extract the resources. Here's another quote. One of the most likely losers out of such a situation is the Venezuelan opposition, only because they don't have an armed wing or strong connections with the armed and security forces. In fact, you'll recall that when opposition leader Juan Guaido, who the U.S. had declared president, even though he never got a single vote for president, when he tried to get the Venezuelan military to stand up and follow him in a coup, they didn't do it. Essentially, no one did it. So there is very little connection between the opposition and the military in Venezuela. Back to the article. Indeed, some analysts argue that even a limited U.S. strike would likely strengthen the Maduro government in the short term. Quote, external aggression tends to generate a rally around the flag effect and gives incumbents a powerful pretext to criminalize dissent as treason. The opposition, which is already fragmented and socially uneven, would likely be further divided between those who welcome U.S. pressure and those who fear being permanently discredited as foreign proxies. Yeah, there are actually some people in the Venezuelan opposition who do not want to be seen as allied with a U.S. invasion because they think they might end up at the gallows at some point. But one more quote, comparative experiences in Iraq, Libya, and other cases of externally driven regime change suggest that coercive intervention rarely produces stable democracy. Of course, I will say that, in that quote, that's believing that the U.S. is aiming towards stable democracy in Venezuela, which is not. The U.S. doesn't give a shit about democracy or freedom or anything else. They just want enough stability to, again, steal the resources. And I've always said there's two things that the U.S. has, the reason the U.S. has been going at Venezuela more than almost any other country, with the exception of Russia, Iran, and China. The reason that's gone on for decades, it all has to do with Venezuela having more oil than everyone else. And they need two things, or they would like two things. One is to steal the resources, but to steal the oil, sure. But if that's more difficult than the second thing they want, then they'll stick with the second one, which is to just make sure that Venezuelan oil is not being pumped out onto the market outside of petrodollars. If they can achieve that, which they have succeeded for decades, largely, if they can achieve that, then they can, they're happy. The petrodollar remains relatively strong, which is the number one goal. So right now they have achieved that. Venezuela is not pumping much oil outside of petrodollars. They're not pumping much oil at all. And the U.S. has achieved that. So I think there's a lot of inside the Beltway folks, the ruling elite, who are like, well, we can keep, let's keep all the economic war on Venezuela, even if it kills people. But let's not go beyond that because you risk all of these other things. Okay, moving on. Let's get to how the FBI sucks. Make sure you click thumbs up, click share, click subscribe, then click the bell icon. I don't know that it matters because I'm more suppressed than ever before. Really, what I would like you to do is become a member at realleecamp.substack.com or leecamp.net, my locals page. But I'll talk a little more about that in a few minutes. And if you're in New York City, I'm performing in 1 week. 1 week, folks. December 12th, Cobra Club. Look it up. But okay. So you might have seen this on the mainstream media. The FBI has suddenly convicted, after all these years, after 5-6 years, 5 years, whatever number of years, finally convicted the January 6th pipe bomber that 5 years ago, who left pipe bombs outside the DNC and the RNC, so both political parties. And here's Ken Klippenstein will convey what is hilarious about this and so pathetic of the FBI. The FBI has taken a victory lap for its arrest this morning of a suspect on the January 6th pipe bombings. Here's the kicker. There was evidently no breakthrough in the investigation. In fact, the FBI reportedly had the evidence in its possession all along. They just didn't notice. The FBI's case against the suspect is not based on a new breakthrough, according to two sources, but instead on a review the FBI conducted in recent weeks of evidence that had already been gathered and which the department had in its possession. They just hadn't looked at it. And that quote, by the way, is from formerly MSNBC, and I realized I had not taken the time to make fun of this yet. MSNBC, now because it's been spun off from NBC or from Comcast or whatever, is now not connected to NBC. So it's now changed its name to MS Now. Okay. Two reasons this is hilarious and fucking stupid. One, tell me anyone who doesn't immediately think multiple sclerosis now. Like, that is what it sounds like. It sounds like you have MS now. It sounds like a doctor being like, we have terrible news. You have MS now. That is like, you might as well just name it some other disease now. So they have made their name MS Now, multiple sclerosis now. They thought about naming it autoimmune attack now, but apparently that barely lost out in the number of votes. Autoimmune attack now didn't win. Thank you, Jolly Lollipop for supporting the show with a super chat. Really appreciate it. But the other reason this is hilarious is because MSNBC, the initial, the channel started with a partnership between Microsoft MS and NBC. So if you take away the NBC and you just make it MS Now, that means its name is now Microsoft Now, which doesn't fucking mean anything. So, like, who tunes into Microsoft Now to learn what's happening in the world? It is just the dumbest name. Like, if you're losing the name MSNBC, just come up with something else. Don't name it after autoimmune issue. VC Nick says it should be More Shit Now. I'll take that. You know what is weird about if you were to name it More Shit Now? It'd be an upgrade for MSNBC. I really think so. They'd be like, all right, well, at least people are getting some shit. Like, More Shit Now. It's a little bit better for them. But okay, to continue from Ken Klippenstein, the voluminous trove of material was largely collected in 2021 and 2022. In other words, the FBI had all the evidence it needed from the start, but never bothered to go through it until now. And he has this funny kind of tangent about, like, that's not the FBI I know. They're being so lazy. He's like, the FBI I know undertook COINTELPRO from the 1950s through the Vietnam War that purported to target radical and subversive individuals and groups. By the way, speaking of that, coming up on this show, I am going to bring you breaking from a few years ago, but breaking news about connections between the FBI and the assassination of Fred Hampton. We didn't have the receipts on the FBI's connection to the assassination of the deputy head of the Black Panthers until now. Breaking news, or rather 5 years from now. Breaking news 5 years ago. Breaking news, okay? But most people don't know it, so I'm calling it breaking news. To continue from his little tangent, the FBI I know targeted Martin Luther King Jr. and kept dossiers on Americans from Albert Einstein to Marilyn Monroe. They were working hard. The FBI I know was so biased that their inattention to the Watergate scandals forced Deep Throat to go to the news media. Funny thing about that, Deep Throat was the guy who revealed the Watergate break-in. Funny thing about that is the man who turned out to be Deep Throat was the deputy director of the FBI. He just realized he couldn't go through the FBI to actually do that work because the FBI didn't care about who broke into Watergate. The FBI I know bungled high-profile investigations, from the anthrax attacks in 2001, the Centennial Olympic Park bombing 1996, the Parkland school shooting 2018, and its infamous mole, Special Agent Robert Hansen. The FBI I know was responsible for Ruby Ridge and Waco. The FBI I know, through its laboratory, provided flawed, biased, and even intentionally false testimony. Yeah. That's the FBI we all know and love. Come on now. And anyway, it's just hilarious that they had this information for years. They just never went through it. And then on Multiple Sclerosis Now TV program, they had on their national security and intelligence analyst, and he tried to portray this as, look at what great work the FBI is doing. He said, I know critics will look at the FBI and point to the fact that this took nearly 5 years, but you can also look at it as the FBI did not give up. The FBI is always going to get their man or woman. That's right. The FBI sat on that information for years. Good for them. Leave it to Multiple Sclerosis Now to tell you that it's good the FBI can't do their job at all. That's awesome. All right. So, and then one last little tidbit here. So apparently the reason this happened, the reason they're doing this arrest now, they finally decided to go through the investigation, figure out who actually left the pipe bombs, etc., is because the Trump administration pressured them, or likely because the Trump administration pressured them to do that and say, we need to catch this person, because they were certain that the person was going to be Antifa. And they wanted to have a quote unquote terrorist with pipe bombs who was Antifa. Like, they wanted that because there's no other example, I don't think, of Antifa doing something like leaving pipe bombs. So they wanted that example. So they pressured the FBI to find out who it was. But here's the kicker. So we don't know that much about the guy they've arrested, named Brian Cole, 30 years old, in Virginia. But here's the kicker of all that. Mr. Cole told investigators he was sympathetic to President Trump's claim that the election was stolen from him, according to a person familiar with the matter. So even though this guy left pipe bombs outside RNC and DNC, he apparently was a Trumper, according to at least that quote from New York Times. Kind of backfired on Trump, pressuring the FBI to find this guy. Although maybe he'll just pardon him. Maybe he'll be like, you know what? If he's a fan of mine, he can leave pipe bombs wherever he wants. That's what I think my fans should do. Okay, let's move on to Israel for a few minutes. Going to get to the Fred Hampton and Gavin Newsom stuff in a bit. But I found this really interesting. We're now seeing, and I'm not saying people didn't predict this, but we're seeing it in real time now, how Israel plans to complete the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, or at least further it. We know, and I've reported significantly on it, that Israel has already ethnically cleansed 58% of Gaza, 58% no longer, that's outside the yellow line or whatever, no longer has essentially any surviving Gazans in it. It is now taken over by Israel, the IDF, the U.S., Trump, and the UN resolutions say that now the U.S., Israel, and a few other countries will, quote unquote, rebuild it. Basically, it's been ethnically cleansed. We can now turn it into our own land, our own property. But what about that other 42%? Well, here seems to be the answer. Israel has announced on Wednesday that the Rafah border crossing, which is before the genocide, this version of the genocide started in 2023, there was only one border crossing from Gaza that went to a country that was not Israel, that Israel did not have control of, right? And that was Rafah, and it went into Egypt, meaning the only two people controlling that border crossing should be Egypt and Gazans. However, the moment the genocide started, Israel decided to cut that off because they didn't want useful things for Gazans coming in through that border. They didn't want food coming in, weapons, anything else, medicine. So Israel took over that area that connected Gaza to Egypt. Now the yellow line completely cuts it off. So Gaza does not have any contact with any entity outside of Israel. That is that land area only touches water and areas Israel has stolen. That is it. So they're now saying that Israel would allow that Gaza border crossing to go into Egypt. However, here's the kicker. It would be an exit only, meaning you can ethnically purge yourselves now. You can ethnically cleanse yourselves out to Egypt. Let me read from Dropsite News. Israel announced on Wednesday that the Rafah border crossing with Egypt will open in the coming days, but exclusively for the exit of residents from the Gaza Strip to Egypt. In a statement on X, Israel's coordination of government activities in the territories posted that the residents' exit through the Rafah crossing will be facilitated through coordination with Egypt, following security approval by Israel and under the supervision of the European Union mission, similar to the mechanism that operated in January 2025. However, Egypt rejected the announcement. Apparently, the announcement was made without consulting Egypt, which might be important. If you're ethnically cleansing people to Egypt, you might need them to agree. The official state information service quoted an official saying that should an agreement be reached to open the crossing, movement would take place in both directions, into and out of the Gaza Strip, in accordance with what's stated in the plan put forward by President Trump. So this is yet again clearly another way that Israel plans to ignore the actual ceasefire agreement, right? They've been murdering people, and I have the updated number. Since October 11th, the first day of this ceasefire, Israel has killed at least 360 Palestinians in Gaza, wounded 922, while 617 bodies have been recovered from under the rubble, according to the Ministry of Health. And just a reminder, if those numbers were being heard at any time other than during this epic genocide, those numbers would be mind-blowing. If you heard that in a couple of months, Israel had killed 360 Gazans, was that the number? 360 Palestinians in Gaza, you'd be like, what? They're just murdering hundreds? But because we've witnessed this genocide, because hundreds of Palestinians murdered becomes like an average weekly thing, we look at those numbers and go, oh, well, that's not bad. It's absolutely amazing how our mind adjusts to this shit horror show. Anyway, that aside, here's another way Israel planned to ignore the ceasefire. They agreed with Trump, and Hamas agreed to the ceasefire deal, and the ceasefire deal said the Rafah border crossing would be open to leave or come back in, leave and go, right? Which any country should have the right to leave and go. That should be a national right. It actually is a national right, but Gaza does not count as a nation, right? Because the UN has not, Israel and the US have made sure that doesn't happen at the UN. Anyway, Israel wants to ignore what's in the ceasefire deal, as they ignore every other thing they agree to, and make it an exit only. This would allow for the completed ethnic cleansing. You basically make the remainder of Gaza, that 42% with 1 point whatever million, I don't know, 1.8 million maybe surviving. You make that area so unlivable, which is what they've done. You make it so tough to get food, so tough to have any kind of life, that leaving through that exit only is the only way people see for any kind of survival. And then Israel gets their completed genocide / ethnic cleansing that they were hoping for. So we're now seeing that that's where things are headed. And I don't know if this has gotten much coverage at all on the mainstream media, but it absolutely should. It probably hasn't gotten almost anything. Speaking of Israel, actually, before I do that, let me just remind everybody, if you're in or near New York City, I am performing live. I have not performed live in New York City in years. This is the show to come to if you can. This coming Friday, so a week from today, 9 p.m., Cobra Club with fellow Redacted Tonight alums, John F. O'Donnell and Anders Lee. I hope you will join me. It's like with tax, it's like $12 to go to the show at the Cobra Club. And you can get that at, you can just look up Cobra Club and click on their events or whatever schedule. But you can also go to tinyurl.com/Lee Cobra Club. Let me see if I can put that in here. Put that on the screen. tinyurl.com/Lee Cobra Club. And grab a ticket to that. That's a week from today. Also, I know, we're getting towards the end of the year. I've set a goal to keep Unredacted Tonight going, to keep my show going, that I'm hoping to get 100 new members at either Substack or Locals. Those are the two main places to support me. You can also do Patreon if you don't want to use anything else. Patreon.com/LeeCamp. Hoping to get 100 new members. So far, I have, I think, 20. So we got about 80, maybe 79 or something left to get. And if you want to join up at my Substack, that would be amazing. If you join up for a year, it'll amount to $6.67 a month. So basically, you'll be buying me a coffee or a couple of cheap coffees a month to support this show and support Unredacted Tonight. And got to get about 79 more before December is out, before 2026, to achieve that goal. And that would be amazing if you do that. You can also go to leecamp.net, my Locals page. If you use promo code LeeCampFree when you're checking out, you'll get a free month. Also, when you sign up at Substack, I will send my ebook to you, Dangerous Ideas, as well. So I would love for you guys to help me achieve that goal. Also, you get all kinds of columns at Substack. I've been posting columns every single week, and I really think you'll enjoy them. All right, let's keep moving here. I thought this was interesting. This was posted by Dropsite about Helen Thomas. You might remember this. I had kind of forgotten this, but it wasn't that many years ago. A few years ago, Helen Thomas, the renowned journalist, reporter, she was in the White House for years and years. I only even know her as like an ancient woman. She covered, not to be hurtful, but she covered 10 presidents. She was there forever. She was like a column of the building. And they basically canceled her because she told the truth about Israel. Towards the end of her, and it turned out to be towards the end of her life, but towards the end of her time as a journalist. And her career came to an abrupt end in 2010 after a rabbi with a video camera asked what she thought of Israel, and she said, "Get the hell out of Palestine." Oh, I think they show the clip, so I don't need to read it to you. But here's Joy Behar kind of yelling at her for, "How dare you say that," kind of thing. But
called freedom.
It's called freedom of speech, and I use it every day.
And you pay the price.
You pay the price. Okay, and you did pay the price. Okay, so like those Israel remarks that you made, and I want people to see what it is we're talking about. So let's watch.
Any comments on Israel? We're asking everybody today. Any comments
Tell them
on
to
Israel?
get the hell out of Palestine.
Ooh. Any better comments?
Remember, these people are occupied, and it's their land. It's not German, it's not Poland.
So where should they go? What should they do?
They go home.
Where's the home?
Poland.
So the Jews,
Germany.
You think Jews go back to Poland and Germany?
And America and everywhere else.
So when you look at that, when I watched that and when I saw it in the first place, I thought to myself that is an insensitive remark, that Poland and Germany are the exact places that the Jews were put into concentration.
yeah, so you know where Joy Behar is going with this. I don't need to play all her garbage, but she did this whole, basically you're supporting the Holocaust by telling people who stole this land to go back to the countries they're from. She also said America. She said go back to America. And a lot of the people in Israel are dual citizens and have the ability to go to any of these other countries. But anyway, even if you don't like those remarks from Helen Thomas, they're one of the few things you could say as a journalist, as respected as she was within the systems of power, and have your career fully canceled. She absolutely lost essentially everything she had. Let's see, I think they listed. The White House Correspondents Association condemned her. Her speaking agency dropped her. Hearst forced her into retirement within days. Major outlets that once relied on her reporting blackballed her. They absolutely just canceled her almost entirely after decades of being a reporter within the White House. Those few sentences just ended it. And within, the drops, I wanted to remind everybody of that. And Sam Husseini Friend of the show and my friend Sam Husseini, who is you might recall, he was the reporter who got dragged out of the Anthony Blinken press conference because he asked Anthony Blinken to address the Hannibal Directive, right? Israel's policy of just murdering everyone. And he was dragged out. They gave him a concussion on the way out. Sam Husseini apparently was the one who talked to Helen Thomas before the 2009 press conference, right as Obama. It was Obama's first press conference, one of his first press conferences, first time he ever called on Helen Thomas. And because she talked to our friend Sam Husseini about Israel having nuclear weapons, which everyone knew Israel had nuclear weapons, but the U.S. government was still not admitting it, Helen Thomas asked this question. Let's see. Here's a young, strapping Obama, 2009.
All right, Helen, this is my inaugural moment here. I'm really excited.
Do you know of any country in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons?
With respect to nuclear weapons, I don't want to speculate. What I know is this.
Okay, I'll keep playing in a second. All he does, he just goes into mushy mouth nothingness. But think about that sentence. Is there anyone in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons? He knows, and everyone there really knew the answer. The answer is yes. There is one country in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons. That is Israel. And he then responds, I don't want to speculate. Think about that sentence. Why would the U.S. president not know which countries have nuclear weapons? And if there was any country other than Israel where it was supposed to be like a secretive nuclear program, the U.S. and other countries would be like, the UN would be flipping out. Like if Lebanon was secretly making nuclear weapons, then Obama would be like, fucking Lebanon secretly making nuclear. Like if Libya were secretly like, and of course they've done that, right? With other weapons of mass destruction. They're flipping out saying Iran's creating them, which they're not, flipping out over Iraq for having WMD that we sold them and they got rid of. Anyway, so he says, I don't want to speculate. I'll play another minute of his bullshit. But
that if we see a nuclear arms race in a region as volatile as the Middle East, everybody will be in danger. And one of my goals is to prevent nuclear proliferation generally. I think that it's important for...
So blah, 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 right? Dodging the question of which country has nuclear weapons. So that's Helen Thomas. And thank you for those people who posted a reminder that she was fully canceled for 2 sentences saying Israeli land is occupied because it's Palestinian land. All right. I got to save time for the breaking news about the FBI connection to the assassination of Fred Hampton. But before we get to that, let's play this 1 minute answer has been making the rounds of Gavin Newsom. He was asked about the billionaire tax. There's an effort in California and in some other places around this country to have a heavy billionaire tax. Because guess what? Billionaires should not exist. They are all sociopaths. And in the rare, super rare, crazy, rare moment where there is one that is not a sociopath, someone like Ben Cohen from Ben and Jerry's or something, where they made a product that happened to become the hottest thing in the world and they became crazy rich. They either drop out of the limelight and go away because they're not a sociopath. They don't need to just keep crushing people and stealing market share and shit. And Ben Cohen has devoted himself a lot to activism and to trying to decrease the U.S. war machine. He funds a lot of important voices. So, and he would probably agree with the billionaire tax, I would guess. He probably would say, yeah, billionaires shouldn't exist. And if you're a billionaire, you should give half your money. You should owe half your money. Maybe not to the U.S. government because we're a war machine, but to something else. But anyway, so, and that's the exception that proves the rule. So billionaires are sociopaths. And absolutely, they shouldn't exist. Shouldn't exist at all. So yes, there should be a crazy tax. It's not going to solve capitalism. You'd still have a shit show, but there should be a crazy tax on billionaires. And Here is Gavin Newsom's response. He does not agree with the billionaire tax because he loves billionaires.
So there is a wealth tax proposal in California that I think you are adamantly against.
Yes, I am.
And we have a mayor that's coming here in New York who would like to have a wealth tax if he could. You couldn't be more diametrically opposed.
Yeah, well, I want to be a Big Ten party. It's about addition, not subtraction.
But this idea of a unifying theory of the case.
I mean, I think we all want to be protected. We all want to be respected. We all want to be connected to something bigger than ourselves. We have.
Is he not the master of saying nothing when he doesn't want to address something? Like, he doesn't want to be caught actually defending the idea that there shouldn't be a billionaire count. Like, he'd prefer to not have to go, billionaires are awesome, fucking love them, dude. The way they crush our democracy that doesn't exist anymore, the way they get whatever they want, the way they add more to climate crisis than fucking anyone on the planet. Yeah, I just love them. He doesn't want to be caught saying that. So instead, he says nothing. He's like, we all want to be connected. We all want to be loved. We all want connection. And like, you could say that for any answer you don't want to, like, why did you beat that dog? Look, I think we all want connection, right? We all want to be something with other people. We all want community. But you didn't talk about why you beat the dog. Did you not hear me say we all want connection? It means nothing. He's saying nothing.
Of the case.
I mean, I think we all want to be protected. We all want to be respected. We all want to be connected to something bigger than ourselves. We have fundamental values that I think define our party about social justice, economic justice. I think we recognize it's important to focus on growth, but also focus on inclusion.
Is he talking about inclusion of billionaires? You know what a tiny number of billionaires are in this country? Like, it is like 0.00001%. You don't need to include the few hundred people that are billionaires that are in the Democratic Party. You got to include them. Yeah, you got to include. It's like, there's plenty of things you don't include. Why is that the thing? Oh, no, we got to have the billionaire. Because guess what? I know why. Because they're funding him. He wants them funding all of his campaigns. He's going to run for president. He wants them funding that. Of course he loves billionaires. And also, you got to remember, he is a capitalist. He is not revolutionary in any way. He's not radical. He may be anti-Trump, which great. I like when people go anti-Trump. But you can't also be fucking capitalist, exploitative, extractive, pro-imperial, pro-war, pro-genocide shitbag.
We have pre-distribution Democrats. We have redistribution Democrats. And therein lies the dialectic, and therein lies the debate within the Democratic Party. We also have Democrats that are representative of their districts.
Sounds like he just started going into a school lesson. It was like, we have Democrats, we have people with brown hair, we have people with blonde hair, I'm just saying things to make it sound like I said things, because I assume eventually you'll get so bored or confused that you'll probably turn to another question, and I don't want to answer this. And so some people have 2 eyes, some people have just 1. Some people, I met one guy with 3 eyes. There's some people that have lots of arms, and some people that have just the 1. So, that's how we're a big tent party, and there's different kinds of tents. There's the kind with the little zipper. There's kinds with latches. Just shut up. Just shut up, you con man.
Representative the people that they represent. So much punditry has been done about, well, is the future of the party Mendami? At the same election that occurred, well, is the future, of Virginia? Is the future New Jersey? Is the future?
But which is it? And that's the question about the unifying theory question, which is you could have a big tent, but if the theories of the case are so diametrically opposed, how split and broken is the party?
Look,
well, what his question is asking is, the parties are meaningless. They're meaningless. They're just designed to get us to believe in the political theater. They don't mean anything. Like, on certain issues, I agree more with Congressman Massey than fucking Democrats. Mamdani's not really a Democrat. Like, the parties are meaningless.
The party's knitting itself back together. We got shellacked in the last election. And there's been a lot of forensic analysis, perhaps not enough, about what happened.
No one says more and says nothing. No one says more of nothing than Gavin Newsom. Oh, what a slime ball. But, that might mean he's perfect to win the next election because the slime balls tend to win these things. Like, let's be honest. Okay. Didn't want to run out of time for this. It is the anniversary, 56 years ago. The Black Panther Party's deputy chairman, Fred Hampton, was drugged by the FBI and then assassinated by local police in Chicago while he slept in his bed. If you want to feel old and unaccomplished, like I do when I read this, the man was 21 years old when that happened. Here first is a couple, they knitted together a couple of sound bites from Fred Hampton.
We're not a racist organization because we understand that racism is an excuse used for capitalism, and we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism.
If we don't hate the motherfucking white people, we hate the oppressor, whether he be white, black, brown, or yellow.
We're gonna fight racism, not with racism, but we're gonna fight with solidarity. We said we're not gonna fight capitalism with black capitalism, but we're going to fight it with socialism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people, and we're gonna have to put it back in the hands of the people. And these people in this class have divided themselves. They say, I'm black and I hate white people. I'm white and I hate black people. I'm Latin American and I hate hillbillies. I'm hillbilly and I hate Indians. So we fight amongst each other.
Nothing's more important than stopping fascism, because fascism will stop us all.
That's the people's thing. Socialism is the people. You're afraid of yourself. If you're afraid of socialism, you're afraid of yourself. We're not a racist organization because we understand.
Well, truly meaningful words from Fred Hampton, and why he was so dangerous is because he united people and he spoke to a lot of people, and he really spoke basically anti-racist ideals, and he got blacks and whites to work together, and that's why he was so dangerous and why he needed to be murdered by the U.S. government. And it wasn't until recently that the actual documents were seen. Thank you, Joseph, for supporting the show. It wasn't until recently that the actual documents were seen that showed a connection between the murder of Fred Hampton and J. Edgar Hoover himself, the FBI, because the actual bullets were fired by the local police. And so that allowed a cover-up where they could say, oh, it was just the Chicago police that did this, that murdered Fred Hampton. So I want to read you some of this. It was written by Flint Taylor and Jeff Haas, who were part of the actual trial to get the FBI to be held accountable, the actual court cases to get them to be held accountable for the murder of Fred Hampton. And so it's kind of written in the first person. Let me read you some quotes from this Truth Out article. Thanks to the liberation of FBI documents from the media, Pennsylvania FBI offices, the revelations of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence Activities, and our own hotly contested pretrial battles to uncover the truth about the raid that killed Hampton, we had been able to document the local FBI's central role in setting up the raid and the highly illegal COINTELPRO program. This program had previously targeted Black liberation leaders like Malcolm X, MLK, Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown, Elijah Muhammad, and the organizations that they led. As the Senate Select Committee would later find in April 1976, the FBI had more recently turned its attention to destroying the Black Panther Party. So Roy Martin Mitchell was an integral part of the Chicago FBI office's Racial Matters Squad and the control agent for the prized asset, meaning Hampton. The informant provocateur, William O'Neill, who was the captain of security of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party. So these are the two basically rats that were informants and worked with the government to make this assassination happen, Mitchell and O'Neill. As such, O'Neill had ready access to the chairman, Fred Hampton, who had garnered particular attention from Mitchell, his Racial Matters Squad, and the COINTELPRO. Documentation of the FBI's secret role in setting up the raid. Again, it was local police, but it was set up by the FBI, including a detailed floor plan designating the bed on which Hampton would later be slain. And keep in mind, he was drugged. They made sure he'd be asleep at that time. Mitchell and O'Neill had drawn up the floor plan. Chicago police raiders and the state's attorney general supervisors, including Cook County, who utilized this valuable information to execute the murderous pre-dawn raid in 1969. We also had obtained two other damning FBI documents. The document that claimed the impending raid at COINTELPRO project and a post-raid document that set forth the outlines of the conspiracy to cover up the FBI's involvement. The raid and its cover-up had to have been approved and ratified at the highest levels of the FBI. This is the part that we have not really had the receipts for, had the paperwork for until recently, showing that there was a connection to the top level of the FBI. Mitchell, nonetheless, made a crucial mistake. He revealed, while in court on the stand, he was trying to do his job, to inaccurately, to lie on the stand so that it benefited the FBI. But he accidentally revealed that the FBI and the government lawyers had suppressed 200 volumes of FBI files pertaining to Hampton, Clark, and O'Neill, files that the judge had previously unwittingly ordered produced. So he accidentally revealed the existence of these files, which meant they are now allowed to have access to these files during the trial. The government rushed Mitchell off the stand, but it was too late. The files contained a great deal of information relevant to the FBI conspiracy. After the jury heard 18 months of damning evidence, the judge still managed to absolve Mitchell, O'Neill, the Chicago bosses, the state attorney general, the 14 raiding cops. The judge let them all off. So, but despite that, there was an appeals trial where they successfully got these 200 volumes of documents and were able to go through them and were able to find a lot of very important information. The first conspiracy, which was grounded in the COINTELPRO program and featured Mitchell and O'Neill's central roles, encompassed the planning of the raid and the raid itself. It was designed to subvert and eliminate the Black Panther Party and its members, thereby suppressing a vital, radical Black political organization. The second conspiracy was in the post-raid to cover up what had happened, and it included legal harassment of the plaintiffs. The court further stated, quote, it intended to frustrate any redress the plaintiffs might seek, and more importantly, to conceal the true character of the pre-raid and the raid activities of the defendants involved in the first conspiracy. In 1983, after 13 years, this is the amount of time it takes to get any kind of justice in America. After 13 years of litigation, it seemed as if the historical record was complete, finally. Was complete and the true narrative had come forward. Chicago police officers under the command of Cook County State's attorney and at the behest of the FBI and its COINTELPRO program targeted Black Panther Party leader Fred Hampton, assassinated him while he lay asleep as part of a murderous pre-dawn raid during which the police fired more than 90 shots into Fred Hampton, and they also killed Panther Mark Clark. They also wounded several others. One of them was Hampton's partner, who I believe was pregnant at the time. So stood the record in 2020, 51 years after the raid. However, they finally got a response to the 2015 Freedom of Information Act. That also provided the first direct documentation that Sullivan, Moore, and even Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover, were aware of Mitchell and O'Neill's Black Panther activities, that they ratified, celebrated, and rewarded O'Neill and Mitchell's integral roles in the assassination. They literally sent reward money to the people who helped murder this innocent man in his bed. Hoover commended Mitchell's, this is some of the documents, Hoover commended Mitchell's very capable manner in which he performed in a matter of intense interest to the Bureau in the racial field and for his effective, skillful guidance of confidential source who furnished valuable information. In November 1969, Chicago Special Agent Marlon Johnson, who was a defendant in the suit, sent a memo to Hoover's desk cataloging O'Neill's important activities and recommending O'Neill for an incentive bonus, like monetary incentive bonus. O'Neill's activities are deleted from the document. Also, December 1969, only hours after the raid, the FBI's administrative division concurred with Sullivan, Moore, and Johnson that the performance of Mitchell in developing and guiding information merits incentive reward in the amount of $200. They literally sent $200 to him for helping them assassinate Fred Hampton. And then December 10th, 1969, a memo sent from the personal desk of J. Edgar Hoover read, I am certainly pleased to commend you and to advise you that I have approved an incentive reward of $200 for your outstanding services. Through your aggressiveness and skill, blah, blah, blah. I want you to know my appreciation. And then there's a few more documents that show the intimate knowledge and connection of not just the local FBI, but the top level FBI in the murder of Fred Hampton. And we only got these documents and this information in 2020, 2021. That article was written in 2021. And how much do you think the mainstream media covered the fact that we now know that the FBI at the highest level murdered an innocent man, an innocent leader in his bed with 90 bullets, murdered another man, terribly wounded others. And they knew all along, and they were part of it. And they actually sent money to the people that helped them do it. Pretty fucking incredible. And that was 56 years ago today that Fred Hampton was murdered. I mean, when you add up all the murders of Americans that were done in that era, I mean, imagine how different this country would be, this world would be, if the following people were allowed to continue to create change and to be activists and to give speeches and to do a variety of other things that were influencing the world. You would have still had JFK, RFK, MLK, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton. I'm sure there's many I'm forgetting, but and some weren't actually murdered, but fled the country because they knew that things were headed that way. Things were headed towards their murder. Medgar Evers, but I was mainly listing the ones that you absolutely know were done by our government, were committed by our government. This is the American government killing Americans, in some cases JFK, RFK, in some cases members of the American government. It was a couple of decades of the most horrific cooing of progress in America, and it's just so disgusting. I'm kind of glad I wasn't alive during it, because I'm glad I don't have memories that I have to process of that time. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up here, but I also wanted to say brand new episode of Unredacted tonight just came out. You can go watch it right now. And I think you'll like this one because it's literally just 26 minutes of debunking of the best, so-called best, pro-capitalism arguments. The arguments that everyone will give you as to why capitalism is awesome. I literally just go through them one by one, trashing those arguments, explaining how you can argue against them if you end up arguing with someone about capitalism. That you can get that episode at leecamp.com/unredacted. Will take you to the Unredacted playlist. It should be there, but if you don't find it there, just look on YouTube, youtube.com/moment of clarity. Thank you guys so much. Just to remind you of the schedule going forward is that on Wednesdays when I do Government Secrets, my other show, which is also on my YouTube, I will not be doing another live stream. So that impacts only 2 live streams a month. Next week, I do not have Government Secrets, so I will have a Wednesday live stream next week. But anyway, I will see you Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and keep fighting. And I hope you'll join up. At least join up for free. If you're not going to join up for $6 a month, at least join up for free by going to realleecamp.substack.com. Thanks, and keep fighting.
Well, brother, I salute you, though, man. You're one of the few that bring together this tremendous artistic talent and still be in such deep solidarity with oppressed people.
It's an honor to be here because I'll tell you, Lee, you have one of the funniest shows on television, bar none.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here. While I was waiting, I was leafing through your wonderful book.
The same to you. I love your show. Be happy to come back anytime.
Lee, this is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in the same earth with you.
I'm sure.
We're just so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to know things. And so it takes shows like your show, and
it is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother.
Consumerism is a theory that people should behave this way to help each other. It's not.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on. Keep fighting. Ha ha.